Excellent connection. Let's see if anyone can hear us. Let us know. Yeah, I mean, looks like we're here. If you can't hear us, please let us know. We're trying some new things here today. If you can't hear us, thumbs up or say, let's get this show started. I think Nick and I would both love to do that. It's been a long day, and it's an interesting game to talk about. Seeing anything over there? They're not saying they can't hear us.
They're not exactly. No one's saying like where's the audio, anything right now. So I think we're good, Will.
All right, let's go ahead and just start it. So, welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Chicago Audible. We're only sitting here now, Nick. What? It's been an hour and a half since the end of this game, and man, I feel like it's been a year since we've been here today. That was probably the longest preseason game that I've ever watched. How about you?
Yeah, I think because of the product on the field, especially early on from the first string offense, first string defense, it makes for a very long day, to be completely honest.
It really does. Bears lost to the Buffalo Bills in Mitchell Trubisky's revenge game by the final score of 41-15. I'm Russell DeWitt. Joined by that was Nicholas Moreano. We are live from Soldier Field, and we are going to give you our top takeaways from the Chicago Bears' second preseason game of the year. So, Nick, are you ready to jump into the first quarter of the show and start this opening drive?
I think so.
Okay, we'll try our best. And by the way, if the audio isn't as clear and you're listening to this, we are inside Soldier Field, so as of right now, there is a mask mandate inside the building, so we do have masks on. So let's go ahead and jump into this first quarter opening drive, which means it's time for my monster moment of the game. And I'm going to go with another Justin Fields to Jesse James connection next 2 weeks in a row. That big play on first down, which is right after Justin picked up a first down with his legs, literally gave me goosebumps that throw did. A wide open yet again for Jesse James. I think Justin said post-game, very similar to the play that they ran a week ago in which he was open. But this time, Jesse was able to beat a linebacker, get a couple steps. Justin didn't have as much time to throw, but just with a flick of a wrist was able to lead him perfectly before Jesse James even made his break and turn upfield for yet another just dazzling completion and a throw that really makes me believe that this kid is the real deal. So for that really reason alone, and maybe because there weren't another a decent amount of other options for us here today, that's going to be my monster moment. So Nick, I'll go over to you for your Moreano minute, your knack, whatever this segment is going to be. Just what's your top takeaway?
I think my top takeaway, and we've talked about it throughout the game, really was that all three phases, especially just even in the first half, really did not play well today. You can look at the offense and the lack of production, the lack of first downs, whatever you want to look at it, that unit didn't play well. You saw the starting defense that, yes, at times didn't have all 11 starters in, but four touchdown drives giving up to the Buffalo Bills against Mitchell Trubisky. Then you even have special teams giving up their own touches. So it was a culmination of all three phases. You add in 10 penalties for 73 yards, I believe it is. And it's just a very sloppy product for week 2 of the preseason. I know there's a bunch of people that are not going to be playing these games come the regular season, but it's still disheartening and just not what Bears fans want to see in, the second week of preseason.
No, not one bit, especially after last week's game. And what we saw in the second half, once Justin Fields took over, a lot of Bears fans, including myself, and Nick, I'll throw you into that boat, thought we were going to see some continuation of at least that. Last week, that defense that you mentioned was playing lights out. They were playing with energy, passion, and it felt like today, at least early on, it wasn't there. There was something missing. And we'll talk about the defense in the third quarter of our show. But let's just move into the second quarter. Let's talk about this Bears offense. Another preseason game, another week, and another week in which Andy Dalton and the starting, I'll put starting in quotes, offense had a tough time getting going. I know post-game, Matt Nagy was talking about, to us in the media, it's hard to really evaluate Andy out there without a handful of his starters. And you and I were talking about that throughout the game, too. It is kind of hard to make a fair evaluation, but still to see those struggles, the lack of rhythm, the lack of any cohesion, and just any movement of the football outside of the one big play, to me, it's a concern. I know it's preseason, and it doesn't matter how much points you score or how many yards you gain, but there's no chemistry, and I know there's not a lot of starters. but I can't help but feel very concerned about where Andy Dalton and the starting offense is as of now. How about you?
I think it's definitely valid. And, Andy Dalton was asked about the lack of chemistry in his post-game press conference today. And he didn't want to make excuses by saying, like, guys like Allen Robinson are not. Keith Goodwin, the guys that are going to be starting on the offensive line. But it is just a little concerning now that for 2 preseason games and the starters just have not looked like a unit that you feel comfortable with seeing, in 2 weeks from now when they have to go and play the Rams in Los Angeles. I think that when you see that kind of product on there, there's just more questions than there are answered. And that's what we thought we were going to get answered in this game is like some of the question marks that we still have about this offense. There's still, I think, even more questions out there.
I believe so as well. Andy Dalton finished 11 of 17 for 146 yards, half of which just about came in at one deep shot to Rodney Adams, that one touchdown. Also had the interception, so a pass rating of about 86.9. So I don't think he's showing Bears fans what he's fully capable of, but he's not getting us really much reasons to be excited to have him as starter. We'll see if he plays the next week's game, but as of right now, if that's his preseason performance, there's a lot of room of just progress to be made and a lot to be desired. Other than that, sticking quarterback Justin Fields wasn't as prolific that we saw a week ago. He took a big hit, but yet another week where he's still making plays with his feet, making some good throws. But I think we saw more of those growing pains this week. What did you see out of Justin for good and for bad?
Yeah, I think for good, obviously you see some of the throws and the touch that he has on the ball and where the ball placement really. Obviously you see the throw to Jesse James. You see plays where it's even a John Bay Johnson who had a great opportunity to catch a perfect ball from Justin Fields but dropped it. So there were some of his teammates not helping him out, but then the big hit that he took, it's a little bit of obviously the offensive line, but also on him just kind of correct himself to know, hey, I have to throw the hot on this or just look. But it's growing pains and things that he's going to learn from and not make that same mistake twice, which is he's been preaching since he got here to Chicago. He's not going to make that same mistake. But overall, I think when he gets out there, you just feel like there's an opportunity for the offense to sustain drives because he can get outside the pocket. He can make things happen. And that's not necessarily the case for Andy Dalton. One more thing, again, his teammates didn't help him. There were multiple false starts that kind of stalled drives. There was also, just plays where I think that unit failed Andy Dalton as much as it happened also with Justin Fields. So it's really, you see these mistakes happening throughout the field. It's not just with Andy Dalton when he's out there and not just when Justin Fields.
I think mistakes could be the word that can symbolize this entire game for this Bears team in all 3 phases. But yeah, Justin Fields, even though he didn't live up to that hype of last week or didn't show like a huge jump from it, I guess last week was so good it's hard to kind of play at that same level week in, week out when you're throwing guys in, hard to get that chemistry. And you said it, people weren't helping him out. Offensive line was very much on the struggle bus. Same thing with those receivers. John Bay Johnson had to drop. Other drops happened as well. So not a ton of help for Fields. Moving right along to running backs, what did you see? I didn't see a whole lot. I think at halftime, Damien Williams was the back. He averaged like 1.6 yards per carry, like 8 yards on 5 handoffs. And I know I said it in the preview show that there's nothing to prove, like for him and David Montgomery, who we didn't see today. But I thought I was going to see a little bit more out of Damien Williams with some touches that I saw today. But I'll probably put that more in the offensive line in the back. But other than that, what did you see out of the running back group?
It was disappointing to see him get that fumble early on because Andy Dalton talked about it. Like the offense was getting in a rhythm, and they were actually at the 50-yard line. That was a good spot for them to be. Like the furthest upfield the first team offense was at, but then that fumble happens, and obviously all that momentum is lost there, and then lost fumble. So you obviously don't want to see that. And like you said, you didn't see much of any of the running backs get going today. I think obviously with this offensive line still trying to figure out who they want, you're not going to see these running backs really be as successful. And we didn't really see them in the passing game either. You honestly didn't see much of a passing attack from both these offenses.
I'm going to tap into my intermacing here, though, and talk about some Khalil Herbert. He had that touchdown run here earlier, and I thought he just built a little bit more momentum from one week and carrying it over to the next. What I liked in that touchdown run was his ability to make some cuts, run through some of those arm tackles. You're seeing the strength, you're seeing the vision, you're seeing the elusiveness that Khalil Herbert brings to the table. So just another week where he's continuing to impress me and just get me more confident that he is going to have a decent role for a crowded running back room as a rookie once we get to the regular season. Even found the cutback lane a couple of times on some of those runs. Moving over to wide receiver, though, we got to talk about Rodney Adams. I think here's the guy that is making the most of every opportunity that's been handed to him. Last week, he was by far and large the most productive receiver. I think he had 4 catches, and everyone else had like 1. This week, he has that big touchdown grab, and I know there's a special story. I'll let you go ahead and talk about that real quick about Rodney Adams, his late night that he had. And again, he's trying to make this team, and he's really making a strong case to do so.
Yeah, Rodney Adams coming into this game had 5 hours of sleep because his wife delivered a baby. They had a baby last night. And now Rodney Adams going out there rocking the baby after scoring a 72-yard touchdown. So this is a guy that nobody on their radar is probably coming into training camp, but has made the most of his opportunities. And, Justin Fields talked about it, like him and Rodney Adams have developed a connection. Rodney Adams, said like, hey, Justin Fields has a connection with everybody. That's just how he's able to do as a quarterback. But I think that's a guy that the ball's just fine going in his direction. And even on the touch or the interception that happened with Andy Dalton, it was being targeted towards Rodney Adams. They're drawing up that play for him and showing kind of the trust that this coaching staff has in a first-team offense for a guy that, like I said, wasn't even supposed to be maybe in the run to make a spot on this wide receiver depth chart.
What about a guy that maybe hurting his skates a little bit and Riley Ridley? Had that drop on the sideline. I know that the DB made a pretty good play on the ball, but still for Ridley, who's been dealing with some drops, hard to see again.
Yeah, it looked like a really good ball from Justin Fields, and for Riley Ridley, coming out of Georgia, it was about him getting those 50-50 balls. That looked like an opportunity where he should have went up, elevated over the DB, but instead kind of let the ball come to him. And look, then there's a little bit of there's ball, defender, then Ridley. And that's kind of hard to make that reception. That's why you go up and get that ball. And it just looked like Justin Fields gave him that opportunity. Really just didn't take advantage.
And the other guy that's on the bubble fighting for a job to keep a job is Damien Williams. Didn't see him out there today. We're all kind of confused, like, where's Javon? Found out from Coach Nagy postgame. He's dealing with an appendix and getting that looked at. So I think we all know how those can potentially go. Hopefully it's okay for Javon. And unfortunate timing for him. We'll see how it kind of affects him moving forward. But that's why, if you're wondering where was Javon Williams, dealing with an appendix issue and was not here today. Anything else with the wideout group?
I think those are the big takeaways. No one really, I think, stood out from that group, regardless if it was with Andy Dalton or with Justin Fields. It was just Rodney Adams, and that's good for him, but not good for everybody else.
Yeah, back-to-back weeks, Rodney Adams really making a name for himself here in Chicago. If I had to choose a player that wasn't on my radar before camp that is definitely on it now, I think Rodney Adams may be the forerunner in my mind. Tight end outside of Jesse James and that great throw. Did you see anything? I told you pre-game I was going to watch for some run blocking. Didn't look too great, but the entire Bears fronts didn't have great run blocking at all today.
No, yeah, I mean, other than that, for like Jesse James tight ends, like Jesper Horsted, I think had a fumble in this game, was able to recover his own fumble. Fortunate enough that he's able to do that after having a 4 touchdown day at practice that I wasn't there, but was able to be fortunate.
You're the man.
So I just won't go, and Jesper Horsted will have fantastic days, but nothing really too much popped out from that group in today's game.
I didn't think so either. But let's talk about this offensive line a little bit more in formal fashion. In my notes, I have one word underneath it that just says struggling. But outside of that, what did you see today? I know we saw a few guys at left tackle. Larry Bourne getting back today was good to see. We need to get him on the field. He seemed pretty pleased with his performance here today. Were you?
Yeah, I liked what I saw from Larry Bourne at that left tackle position. And one, just seeing that he's playing left tackle, thought we'd see a little bit at the right tackle spot. But, he even talked about it in his press conference. Like, was it difficult? Yeah, but he can adjust to make that kind of transition over there. Having a guy like Jason Pierce, he mentioned in his post-game press conference about how he can pick his brain. But I thought he played a pretty solid game.
What's your take on Jason Peters not playing? You said in our preview show you did not expect him to play. Do you believe that is still a good indicator that he will make this final roster? Because I think if he was on the bubble, you need to see him out there in a game situation.
Yeah, the thing is with him, he had one practice under his belt for this week, so I think you will see him in some capacity in this final game because this is not just your traditional dress rehearsal game that it would be in previous years. So I think you will see Jason Peters, even if it's for a series. And I still think, yeah, he's definitely at this point alone. You bring him in to be that hopeful left tackle because Elijah Wilkinson didn't, do anything in today's game to make you feel confident. There were times where, hey, the left tackle, it was one of the plays where Elijah Wilkinson's on the ground and then Andy Dalton I think he gets sacked or it's either a throwaway or something along those lines. But Elijah Wilkinson is on the ground. And that's never going to be a good idea to, have your quarterback cover.
No, Wilkinson, we thought pre-camp is someone that's coming in to be that swing tackle. Tevin Jenkins had injury. We all know it changed everything. So we had Wilkinson at left for a while. That J.D. Simmons playing right. I thought both looked not great. I would say Simmons looked really bad.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do moving forward? Who do you move over to right tackle? Would it be Borum? Would that be Wilkinson in hopes that Peters can be your left tackle guy? That may be a loaded question at this stage, but after watching what we just did here, a couple hours ago, what do you do to address this tackle position in-house? Because I don't think what they're doing now is what's going to even be something that could work week one.
I think the Bears just got to hope that Jermaine Ifedi can get healthy at that right tackle position. Even that in itself, it's Jermaine Ifedi we're talking about. This is not a top 10 tackle. This is a guy that, kind of grew comfortable into that role later on in the season, was bouncing in out inside and outside. So that's what I think the hope is, that he can be that right tackle, that Jason Peters can be that left tackle, and you kind of go from there. Because I think the interior will be okay. Will be just fine, actually. But it's really, looking at either end and hoping, you're kind of just hoping for the best.
Yeah, and I don't know what the best is. Perhaps it is Ifedi is what they're hoping can pan out here if he can get healthy in time. But if not, man, I'm getting worried about that Rams defense. To wrap up the offense, who do you think stock rose the most?
Good question, Will, because I think I
know
probably, there's one guy that the only positive really that we talked about other than Justin Fields is Rodney Adams, right? That's the one guy that you can point to, like, hey, he had a good game. He's the one who stood out the wide receiver position. But other than that, there weren't any guys that would probably feel good after this game. Maybe a Larry Borum would be another one, but yeah, those are the only two I can think of.
Now, I'm full of loaded questions here today for you, Nick. Outside of the offensive line, what's your biggest concern right now with this offense?
Ooh, I mean, I think just the lack of production that we're seeing from that first team unit. And I know Allen Robinson's not out there, Marquise Goodwin's not out there, and Darnell Mooney's not playing every single snap. So I think that is the biggest concern. Like, is this what we're going to see week one? And Andy Dalton was saying it's most likely that's not going to be the case. But we know what an offense in Chicago looks like. It can look just like that.
Yes, it can.
We've seen that in regular season games. So that's the thing that I think as fans, you're probably frustrated with. Even I'm like thinking, how is this really going to look week one? But I think that's the main thing. Is that what the offense is going to look like come week one against a very good Rams defense?
Now, I know they were like 0 for whatever on third down. I didn't want to pull up the stats, but they weren't converting on third down. They can barely even reach the red zone. Is there anything out of that you wanted to at least mention here today? Again, when it comes to preseason, you can use stats either way, but I feel like it was just so bad, and a lot of people watched this game. It didn't make a lot of sense to dive into third down issues when you probably don't have a ton of plays drawn up for 3rd and 17. But anything that you wanted to mention with those struggles before we kind of wrap up the offensive talk?
I think it is the penalty issues. I don't remember the exact number it was in week one. It may have been 7 or around 8, and then they got to 10. And some obviously were on defense, special teams. But you see the false starts, consecutive false starts for on the offensive line. You see there's things that put the offense in not an advantageous situation to stay on the field. So that's also something that is concerning because we've also seen that plenty of time in regular season play.
Okay, so it was 0 for 11 on third down, 1 for 4 on fourth down, and 1 out of 2 red zone trips here for the Bears today. Let's go ahead and switch sides of the ball. Let's talk about this Bears defense. And I was just surprised by, again, the lack of tenacity that we saw from that unit here today. We got more starters back compared to what we had even a week ago. The turnover bucket, I believe we had some turnovers here today, didn't we, on defense? Did we have any, actually?
I don't
Did we? No, or did we give the ball away?
No, there was the one fumble recovered because of Trevis Gipson on the sack.
Yeah,
Fumble. So that was the one.
Right. So we had one, but it wasn't like last week where the defense was just getting after this Buffalo Bills offense. They weren't living in the backfield, and they just weren't playing with that same energy. Why?
Well, I think it doesn't help when you can't tackle anybody. So you can rally off like some of those plays that are made, like make a good tackle in the open field. That was the exact opposite of what this entire Bears defense was not capable of doing. It's just routine tackles that whether it's not looking up and actually wrapping up or lowering your shoulder, whatever it may have been the case, there's so many guys missing tackles, and that can be deflating for not only your defense, but your entire team, where, hey, if you make the tackle, force third down, nope, there's the yards after contact for the ball carrier, whatever it may be, but that could be a reason, but honestly, it could be a whole bunch of things. Maybe just like seeing the offense do nothing similar to what we've seen from in Bears games.
So it wasn't just Mitch.
It wasn't just Mitch. He was dicing though. He was throwing some good. Well, look, he was finding his guys in the middle of the field with some line today too.
Yeah,
like just line.
It was. We didn't have our two starting inside linebackers in. That doesn't help. But the Bears defense allowed 34 points by halftime. Only 6 third downs on 42 plays. So they weren't even getting that Bills offense and a chance to even get off the field. This Bears defense wasn't. And they allowed 5 red zone trips and 4 touchdowns just again in the first half. But going into our positional breakdown, defensive line, personally, upset that didn't see Andy Goldman here today. Now, was it back? Is it what I saw pregame?
I didn't see exactly what it was.
So there was some issue in terms of an injury or that he's dealing with that he wasn't able to go. So he goes from the COVID list last week, comes back, practices, unable to go today. For a guy that has not played since 2019, I'm concerned about that game conditioning. So again, just kind of irritated that we weren't able to see him here today, even though, again, it's out of my control specifically, but even probably the Bears' control as well. But out of the defensive line, who stood out?
I saw Kyrus Tomlin make a couple of plays, just where he's taking on a block, but also making the tackle in the backfield. So that's exactly what he's going to be asked to do if he does have to just fill in for Eddie Goldman, like he had to do today with being the starting nose tackle. But really, on that starting defensive line, there was only one time I really mentioned Angelo Blackson, where he had such a monster game in the first preseason game against the Dolphins, but there's only one mention of him that I have in my notes. And then really nobody else, I think, again, taking advantage of it. I think there was Artie later in the game, like when you're talking about third and fourth stringers making plays, like, yeah, there are those guys as well. But in terms of that first team defensive one, that part of the unit that gave him the 4 touchdowns, like, yeah, that's probably, there's not a lot of standouts.
Yeah, Tonga had 2 more QB hits today. Mm-hmm. So he's continuing to impress me. Mario Edwards did come away with 2 sacks. I think in a game that was as tough to watch as it was today, some players like that, as players are rotating in and out, which is hard to keep up with, some of those plays do get kind of lost. But when I was reviewing this right before we went live, saw that and was like, oh, yeah, I remember. Yeah. Edwards did get in there. He did make a couple of plays. That's good because we're not going to have him for a few weeks. So he needs to get some work in now before he has to I don't think he can sit in the sidelines, right? If you're suspended, you have to be home.
You have to be somewhere, but it's not going to be at Soldier Field or wherever the Bears are.
Okay. Good point. So, yeah, getting Edwards into the mix now is really a good sign. But that defensive line, outside of that, just one final check here on my notes. You mentioned Blackson with the splash and Tom with the 2 QB hits. So let's move on to outside linebackers. And let's start with the, quote, starters. Robert Quinn, early on, he didn't take a real good angle on that touchdown run in the very first drive of the series. I put you next to him. I think that's pretty fitting.
It is pretty fitting because that should be a tackle that a guy, for as long as he's playing this league, should make. But we've also seen that Robert Quinn, and just here in Chicago, not finish plays. And, yeah, that's on him. Like, he has an opportunity to tackle the running back in the backfield, Devin Singletary, and it just didn't happen. So, again, that's effort. That's just knowing exactly what your coaches have taught you throughout the week and throughout your entire NFL career, like how to put yourself in position to make a tackle. Didn't happen today for him. So that was definitely.
But let's talk about a positive at the position. I thought Trevis Gipson really built off of his performance last week and took it up another level here today. A better game overall. some really good plays against the run, had a really good coverage. There was one play that was completed on the sidelines, but he was step for step with that tight end. And for Trevis Gipson, like his coverage ability is pretty low on the things I would hold him accountable for. But that was pretty impressive coverage overall. And yeah, I know he made some good plays in the backfield. What did you see out of Trevis Gipson today? That gets you excited. Is that more what you've been seeing at camp?
That is, and the play where he causes the fumble, it's all effort because he's coming off or going against that right tackle and has to track down the quarterback who's going left. So that's just effort and relentlessness in his pass rush to one, corral the quarterback, but also get the ball out. So I think that is just exactly what you want to see from Trevis, get those splash plays, because he's definitely capable of it. And yes, maybe it's a backup tackle, whatever it may be, but he made the play, and that's exactly what you want to see. And probably limited. I'm going to say limited because he's not the starter, but when he gets in the game, you want to see those kind of opportunities if they present himself and he capitalizes.
When I see Trevis Gipson make those kind of plays, and I see a Jeremiah Tatu not really stand out, which is someone I was very high on coming into the offseason, and Robert Quinn struggling, I can't help but envision a larger role for Trevis Gipson this season, especially once this season wears on. We get to that second half of it. He can be a guy that the Bears do start to lean on. And if he can have games like today, make plays like we saw today, Ryan Pace is going to look pretty good for that draft pick. Anything else at the outside guys, or do you want to move on to the inside?
The only other thing on the outside guys, I have Jeremiah Tatu in my notes, because there's an offside by number 50 there. So yeah, I would feel like just even in the training camp practices I've been to, you haven't heard a lot about Jeremiah Tatu. And look, not to be like concerned or anything, but you would like to. You would just like to be in a free agent acquisition. I think he's definitely capable of that. He's going to get his reps, but like Will just said, Trevis Gipson is the one who I've seen in training camp practice, who's actually making plays out here in these preseason games. He's going to get that first opportunity. But I wouldn't be too concerned with Jeremiah Tatu yet. I know that's all I got on him in the notes, but that's all I got for outside.
One more thing on that position before we move on, though. Kamara almost got that safety. Really good, just effort play. Didn't win on his first move. I don't think he even won that second, but he was able to kind of finally rip through the tackle and almost took Jake Fromm down for a safety. Fromm barely got that nose of the football over the goal line. But still, that sack was a very strong play, really an effort play. So if you're looking for a practice squad candidate and a guy that's making his best case, I think Kamara there for the outside linebacking unit did a good job here today, specifically with that play. But shifting inside, what do you got? Because I have nothing.
Yeah, no, I really don't have anything either. I think for the inside linebackers, like they were in. Look, this could be a combination with the defensive line. There were some holes that were given up just in those first couple of defensive series where there are 7-yard gains by the running backs, and then you're hearing Ogletree or Christian Jones or whoever it may be, but there wasn't much out there to report. The only other thing, Joel Iyebuniwe not recovering that what on the punt or whatever it may have been.
Whatever that fumble was.
Whatever the fumble.
He was right there, and I still know like his arms were on that ball.
He's got big arms.
Huge arms. He should have.
Yes, and I remember just talking to the guys next to us in the press box, like that was Joel Iyebuniwe's one chance. Like, hey, he did something and couldn't capitalize on it.
Could not. Let's move into the secondary, though. I think it is unfortunate, by the way, that we don't have more inside linebacking notes. I know we didn't have Danny. I know we didn't have Roquan. But still, like with Ogletree being out there, Christian Jones, you'd think they would have made a little bit of a bigger presence felt today, but they didn't. So I think that could be maybe the bigger note behind the no notes. That we have the no notes may mean a lot more than actually having some notes here. But moving to the secondary, Artie Burns.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the plus here. And like one of the pluses on defense is Artie Burns and his ability to get his hand on the ball and just dislodge it from the receiver's hands. He did that twice in this game that I know I noted. But that's the guy that was trending in the right direction, upward direction, because of how he's doing in training camp, with the reps he was getting with the first team defense. And I think that obviously could be an indication of where the Bears might want to go with the cornerback position opposite Jalen Johnson. But he had himself a game. I know you're going to ask a question later. I'm just already going to answer it. He had himself a day where he made the most of this opportunity.
He definitely did. He led the team today with 2 passes defense. Every time I feel like they're kind of testing Artie Burns, he stepped up, to the challenge. I was very excited to see that because he is someone that, coming back from the ACL, as we mentioned, had a lot against him this offseason with what the Bears did, things of that nature. So I'm glad to see him making the most out of his chances. I know Jalen Johnson was out there, also had a pass defense. Actually, he also had two. So I guess they were tied to lead the team. He did give up the touchdown, but again, with someone like a Jalen Johnson, I'm confident that even like a low or two here in the preseason isn't going to be, something to be concerned about come week one. What else did you notice from the position? If it's not even just a specific player in a specific play, but how they're being utilized? Because I had a couple takeaways, but I'll go to you first.
Well, the big thing for me early on was how often that Bills offense and Mitchell Trubisky kind of went and threw to Kindle Vildor's side. On that very first drive, they were thrown in that direction 4 times. There were 3 completions. Vildor did get 1 PBU on there, but you just kind of see, I think the Bills identified maybe the weak link. And you could go in the inside linebackers as well because the starters weren't there, but that's what I noticed. And there were just several plays throughout that game with Vildor where he's giving up a reception. Then you have Artie Burns, who we just talked about, making plays. So I think that was the big takeaway early on for me, what the Bears might do at cornerback position. I think this week in practice would be very telling.
I would love them to start to lean towards an Artie Burns in terms of giving him those chances. For at least worst case, you start taking out a fire under Vildor, because we all can tell now Desmond Trufant is not pushing for this job.
I don't even know if he was here, to be completely honest. Just using the binoculars, definitely wasn't in uniform, and I don't even know if he was physically here at Soldier Field. I can't confirm or deny that, but it just looking through the sideline, I just didn't see him.
Right. So with that, who knows? All we know is that he's not making this team, and if he does make this team, that will shock me beyond belief.
Yeah, because like we said, there's no special teams value. You're not going to get any special team value from Devin Trufant. So what is the point if he's not starting?
Right. So with that being said, and you have to say it once in a while. I guess it's 2 shows in a row, so shame on me. I have to kind of take that out of vernacular. Live post game shows. They're a lot of fun. No, you're okay. All right. So getting back to it here, when it comes to this, if he's not going to bring it to the table, and Artie Burns is continuing to progress, we'll see if he can push for that job. And even if he doesn't get the week 1 nod, the Bears can get him something where we got 3 people want to come in on this.
They're making sure this place is clean, which is,
they're doing their job too. Exactly. They're doing their job too. Artie Burns. Let him have a chance. And if he doesn't start week 1, at least Vildor knows there's someone knocking on his door. But I think Artie Burns, at this rate, is making this the whole team.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Not just making, but competing for that starting cornerback, for sure.
Now I just keep looking at the door, like, who's going to walk in next? Is that going to be Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy? Did we get a guest today? No, probably not. Anything else at the position? I know they were flipping some nickel guys here today. Duke Shilley was out there in the first series, struggling with Kindle Vildor, but then they did try out some Marquis Christian, who did lead the team today with 5 total tackles.
Yeah, and then I have in my notes here, Marquis Christian giving up some receptions as well. Just
that's how he gets
slants. That's how he gets the tackles, just with those slant routes over the middle. And the Bills are going pretty, I would say, short, quick game, and it was working. So they're not going to obviously get away from that. But yeah, like that's the position where you're still trying to see who's going to take advantage of that. And like Duke Shelley was playing into late in this game too, as well. So like this week, I think in training camp, the training camp practice is going to be telling what they're even doing with the secondary and who potentially can start.
All right, moving over to safety. What did you take from that unit? I was glad to see we got starters back today. We got Eddie Jackson. We had Deshaun Gibson for a little bit of time. There was one play where Eddie Jackson didn't make a lot of good effort on the tackle. I think it's the same one that Quinn missed his contain, that run by Singletary for the touchdown. Jackson didn't make great job of support, but then later on, he did make a really good play in the backfield against a run. I think that was a 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
So he did turn that around. So I took that off as like a big negative, but I feel like at least bring up both sides of the equation here. But outside of that, what did you see from the safeties today? Again, there's not a lot of good for this entire game.
No, not a lot of good. And to add on to those negative plays, Deion Bush missing a wide open tackle in the back. He literally bounced off the guy. Like, what's going on there? And I'm pretty sure the ball carrier ended up getting into the end zone, if I'm not mistaken. and Deion Bush has a clear shot to take out his legs, and like I said, Deion Bush just bounced off the guy. So again, just adding on to the missed tackles that happened on all three levels of this defense, defensive line, linebackers, and the secondary. So I think that's, just something that for a guy, I think Deion Bush will end up making the team, but that you don't want to see it.
Right. Other than Deion Bush, no one really moved the needle up or down compared to last week or what you've seen at camp. Nothing really changed in my opinion.
No, DHC got close to an interception. It still ended up being a reception for the Bills, but he was in the right position. I remember it was like towards that left sideline there. But other than that, nothing really stood out from that position or any of those guys.
Did we have someone on our side that almost had like a pick? And it was like,
Thomas Graham Jr.
There you go.
Made a good play on the ball, right there where it needed to be, but the ground kind of dislodged the ball.
Love that return though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good effort. Took it a little bit horizontal, was able to get that angle. And again, if you would have caught that, it wasn't a touch. It was a touchdown. But we're watching Eddie Jackson. We're watching Jalen Johnson literally on the field, running like almost escorting him into the end zone. So I like that from two veteran guys in the secondary. With Thomas Graham Jr., you can tell they were proud of that. So that was one of my happier moments that I was able to take away from this game. All right, let's move over to special teams. If you don't have any final thoughts on defense, I didn't want to kind of dive into it too much.
No, I don't think it's worth it, Will. It wasn't a very good performance in that first half.
Oh, wait, stock up real quick. Travis Gipson again or Artie Burns? Choose one.
I'll go Artie Burns.
Okay. Stock down.
Kindle Builder.
Okay, that's it. I don't want to get any more into it, but I want to make sure at least we adhere to what I put here in my notes for a segment. So quarter four for this post-game show and special teams. Are the Bears, are they going to have punt coverage issues all year?
Yeah, it seems like because it's happening 2 weeks in a row. So it's a unit again. Maybe it somehow gets better because you know who's making this team. You get to rep those guys every single week. There's not people coming in and out, but still, maybe it's what's being coached as well. It could be an issue if you're seeing multiple different guys messing up. That could be the issue, but it has come in both of these preseason games, and that's obviously third time's a charm. Maybe you never know.
I don't know. Those lanes are wide open, and it seems like the pattern from our vantage point is we kick to one sideline or the other, and they just pretty much take it to the other side, and there's no one there. So maybe it's a lane integrity issue, a contain issue, but whatever the heck it is specifically, and they'll know more than me, that got to get cleaned up. And I know last week I said, don't worry about it. It's only the first week of the preseason. But for that to be exactly the same here today, if not worse, I'm concerned. Other than that, we had that field goal for Brian Johnson, 54-yarder for him. And I know that at one point you were confused by Santos.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Johnson's been really good in training camp. It's just, I guess the Bears know that Tyler Santos is going to be their starter. And I guess it's just an opportunity to give him like a live game run. But if you're looking to maybe just raise Brian Johnson's stock to where someone who needs a field goal kicker, that's why I give him those opportunities. But I could see it both ways. I was just like, hey, 54-yarder, might as well try that now in a game setting. And so then you can go back to the regular season like, yeah, I already nailed that. But I could see it going both ways.
All right. And then in the return game, we got to see Daz Newsome returning punts. We got to see Khalil Herbert a little bit more action returning kicks. I thought both rookies impressed in that regard.
Yeah, I think it kind of gives maybe, I don't know if a sense of confidence is the right way of phrasing it, but just seeing those two rookies and really just at positions where we just didn't know who was going to be back there. You just didn't know. I think you like Khalil Herbert as a kick returner, and I'm pretty sure Daz Newsome also got one rep as kick returner as well. And then Daz Newsome, he didn't look like a Ted Ginn Jr. as a punt returner. Yeah. So I mean, and just some of the other guys that we've seen, even Jordan Lucas dropped a muffing a punt. We didn't see that from Daz Newsome. It's not like he did much out there, but at least he caught the ball.
He broke a tackle and he gained some yards.
Yeah. So it wasn't spectacular, but maybe a sense of confidence going forward from those two rookies is all you really want at the kick returner and punt returner position.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert averaged about 18.8 yards per kick return. Daz Newsome averaged 6.5 yards per punt return, 2 returns for 13 yards. And I think the one time Daz was back there returning kicks, it was a touchdown. So there goes that. Anything else on special teams, or do you want to move on?
Let's move on, Will.
Moving on, it's time. I have in my notes we can do the call and audible segment. I think I'm going to save it for the regular season. If we wanted to change anything, I'm certain we change a lot of things. I think there's one thing here that we would like to change that can change the outcome of the game or anything of that nature. So who's going to be your preseason week 2 MVP?
I said it when we were in the press box earlier, Will, like Artie Burns was the best defensive player out there. So I'm going to go with him being somebody that made the most of his opportunities, didn't give up any big plays, made plays on the ball. And it's someone that's, completely different. So I'll give it to Artie Burns in a game that was really one-sided in all facets for the Bills. I'll give it to Artie Burns in Miami.
You're going to go Artie Burns. I'll go offense. I'll go Rodney Adams for the big play, and also for having the birth of his daughter last night, sleeping on the couch with his baby next to him, only 5 hours of sleep, gets here at Soldier Field, and ends up continuing to make a strong case. I mean, those are some obstacles to kind of overcome. I mean, deliveries and birth, those are long, strenuous times. And I'm preparing for my own here, so I'm learning so much about it. So for him to be able to rebound as quickly as he did, and to, he said it, I scored a touchdown for my daughter. I scored a touchdown for her. I mean, to me, that's MVP worthy. And we don't have many of those opportunities here in the show to kind of highlight. And for a guy who's fighting for a roster spot, just having a newborn, I just love how that progression kind of played out. So for those reasons, I'm going to give Rodney Adams my MVP. And that was a heck of a catch that he had. Yep. And I love the run afterwards. He was able to slip through the DB, break a tackle, and he had the speed to break away all the way for the score. So Rodney Adams is going to be my week 2 for the preseason MVP. So Nick, I'll give it to you for your 2-minute warning, and we can close out.
Yeah, this is the game where I think you look at it for Matt Nagy, and he started the post-game press conference for the positives and started by talking about Caleb Johnson and his field goal kick. So I think that kind of tells you what this game, on all facets, all levels, all phases, the positives from it. So really what you're looking out for in this last preseason game is to reduce those penalties, to look more efficient on offense for your first team, and then second team when Justin Fields comes in, and then just really limiting mistakes and trying to look like a football team that's about to play real football, in less than a couple of weeks here. So this was not a good performance by the Bears. You saw bad tackling. Like I said, you saw penalties. You saw all 3 phases give up, just not look like they should be. And I get it, it's just preseason, you're working out some of the kinks, but Buffalo Bills look like a team that's ready to go for the regular season and look to do some things. So I'm looking forward to see how this team rebounds, how they even handle this last preseason game, what we're going to see in terms of reps for individual players. But yeah, this is a game where we're looking at each other like, man, when is this going to end?
Yeah,
honestly. So that's how I'll wrap it up and go to you.
Yeah. So for me, I'll preface it kind of how Nick, you were kind of speaking about throughout the majority of yours. It is only preseason. The Bears that went to the Super Bowl, I remember that preseason. They lost all 4 games. And I thought, oh boy, what kind of year are we in for? Granted, I was like 13 years old, but seeing those struggles in preseason and then what kind of year we had instilled something in me to not take what we see on the field, verbatim exactly how it is. You have to take it with various grains of salt. But there is still a large part of me that what I saw here today, the lack of effort on defense and just not that same, again, I love the word tenacity that I saw last week. I want to make sure that gets turned around offensively. Who knows what's going to happen next week? Like in terms of the starters, Andy Dalton seemed a little frustrated that he wasn't playing with the ones. He said he's fine with it, but did admit it's hard to build some of that chemistry. Matt Nagy talked about that too. And I wonder, how is that really setting Andy Dalton up for success if you're not allowing him to build some of that chemistry? And also, if all these other starters are at a spot where they don't have to play, why does Andy Dalton have to play? And why can't Justin Fields get some of those reps earlier on in the game? Those are just thoughts that I've had here as we've gone through this podcast. To me, it doesn't make too much of sense. But as we go forward to game 3, let's find out first what Matt Nagy's plan is before we start projecting what that game should be about, because he can sit all the starters, and that game will be pretty much evaluating the back half of the roster, or he may play starters yet again. In that case, then we need to start looking at how those guys can kind of rebound from a very poor game overall here today. But luckily, the score doesn't matter. Luckily, this game won't count when it's all said and done. But I thought there were a few players, bright spots like an Artie Burns, like a Trevis Gipson, like a Brian Johnson, like a Rodney Adams, a Khalil Herbert, a Larry Borum, that when you take those positives and those players showing you something, at the end of the day, that's what you should take home with you. Not the final score, not the 0 for 11 on third down on offense. It's those players stepping up, and some players that should be core guys, younger guys, and also some guys like a Rodney Adams that came out of nowhere. That's pretty damn cool. So that's going to be my 2-minute warning. And Nick, let's get to another show with you at Soldier Field, man.
Yeah, again, still adjusting. Obviously, we're doing it a little differently than we did even the last time we were here. But yeah, I'm glad that we were able to do this, even despite the game being a little lackadaisical at times. But yeah, it was another great opportunity. I'm looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, we're supposed to be outside, but there was a thunderstorm, so we had to move inside, change the setup again just a little bit. That's what we're here for. We call audibles. We change on the fly. And I hope that everyone listening enjoyed this show. I want to thank everyone who watched here live. I hope the streaming quality was strong. Hopefully it's good compared to last week. I know the audio last week when reviewing it wasn't great. If the video's not awesome, hopefully at least you get some better audio out of Nick and I. And then for all the podcast listeners around the globe, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. This show went a little longer, I think, than both Nick and I anticipated for the preseason game. So if you're still listening after that game to us talk about it, again, there's a special place in my heart for Bears fans just like you. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get all the updates from us over there throughout the year, and rate and review our show over on Apple Podcasts. That mean a lot to both Nick and myself. Up next, Nick, you have some camp reports coming up this week early on, right?
I will be there Monday and Tuesday. So, yep, two camp reports coming out this week.
All right. I look forward to hearing what these guys do Monday and Tuesday to kind of correct some of the mistakes that we saw out here on the field today. So until next time, bear down, Chicago.
Don't have to go over there. But,
oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go there. Actually, before we head out, for anyone still here, go to chicagoaudible.com/shop.
Get some gear.
Get some gear. I'm going to go turn this off right now.